The Colorado legislature is considering returning to a presidential primary system for both political parties. The proposal currently would allow unaffiliated voters to participate by registering with a party with a 30-day expiration clause. Patty, both parties suffered huge controversial issues with their caucuses this year for various reasons. But is there enough momentum to get this bill passed in the limited time left in the legislative session?
I think there is, because we were talking last week when Donald Trump was calling Colorado's system rigged. It's not rigged, it's just stupid. And there's no reason we shouldn't recognize this stupidity and fix it. The caucus system, when it was invented in 1912, was lovely, and but it's gone the way of doilies and front parlors. A lot of people cannot go on a Tuesday night after working to weigh in on their presidential candidate. And as you see from this campaign, how many people are really, really interested? Why shouldn't people who can't happen to go at 7 o'clock on a Tuesday night have an opportunity to register their choice? And 37% of Colorado's voters are unaffiliated. Why can't they do it too? We already allow people to declare parties just for the Democratic and Republican state primaries. So why not this? I think it's a smart move. I'd like to see it happen. I would like to not have to hear Donald Trump talk anymore about how Colorado is the disgrace of the nation.
David, what do you think about the idea that would allow unaffiliated voters to register for this 30-day period?
Some states do it, others don't. There's good arguments on both sides. You know, to me it seems kind of strange that when the synagogue is voting on who they're going to hire for the new rabbi, you say, well, I'm a Presbyterian, I can walk in off the street and say I'm technically Jewish for the next 30 days and I get to vote on the rabbi. You know, each party could just choose to have its party members select who its nominee will be to be put forward to in the general election. I don't think there's good arguments pro and con on both caucuses and primaries. I think they're both good systems with advantages, but we should not change it now. First of all, there's not enough time to fully debate it and consider it. Secondly, lying Donald Trump would treat it as a vindication of his lies. 65,000 Republican voters participated in the caucus, which led to a process which rightly rejected him. And if any changes are made now, he will continue his libels of Colorado and say, see, this proves I was right and Colorado changed as a result. We should absolutely not make any changes which would the rest of the nation might mistakenly purport as vindicating his lies and slanders against Colorado.
Ben, we've had a presidential primary before in this state, but the fact of the matter is it costs a lot of money. I mean, we're talking about democracy and people voting, which are all great issues, but at the end of the day, Coloradans, if this gets passed, are going to be paying a lot of money to make this happen, and there are some years that even with it being Democratic and voters, there's not a lot of involvement. Is the price tag going to be the brick wall this proposal heads into?
I don't think so, and prepare yourself. I'm about to agree with David.
Let him sit down.
The fact that the only reason Donald Trump was critical of the Colorado system is because he lost. Had he won, he wouldn't have any criticisms at all to levy about the caucus system. But the reality is this. I like the caucus system. It served a purpose over a period of time, but over the years we've watched it evolve. I used to host caucuses. We used to do them in our living rooms. And then after the ADA, we realized that most homes weren't ADA compliant. You couldn't hold your caucus in a living room or in a home anymore. So most of them got moved to schools and other public buildings. But the reality is, since President Obama's first election to now, what we're seeing is interest has grown in that part of the process so significantly that it probably no longer fulfills the original purpose. It's too cumbersome, it's too awkward, and people show up and they can't figure out what's going on, and the people who organize the caucuses just say to heck with it, everybody come on in, let's get the voting done so you can go home before 1 in the morning. So we probably need to go to a primary. I've got some reservations about letting unaffiliated voters affiliate at the last minute just to participate in one primary or another, but I think it's the right move to make, and at the end of the day, the cost should be irrelevant. The reality is we're a democratic form of government, a representative government. We ought to make it easy for people to express their opinions and choices. Costs be damned.
Ben, as you look at this, is this the right idea but possibly the wrong time, or is it exactly the right time?
Well, I think David makes a good point. We don't want to seem reactionary. I think, having said that, though, we did just go through this caucus season. We saw sort of how convoluted it is. Certainly, I can relate from experiences that have been shared with me about how confusing the caucus process is just to be in it. So I think from sort of simplicity's sake, having a primary is much easier. I think that for participants, it's easier to just understand. You go and you vote and you're done. So I think from that standpoint, it makes a ton of sense. I don't know enough about the ins and outs and the logistics of doing it now versus next year. I think that there's probably some good logic to waiting until after we get through this presidential season and then putting it in place for the next round of elections. But generally, I do think it's the right idea. And for the record, I'd better think it's a good idea because my father created a Democratic primary in 1992, which we then went away from. So good job, Dad.
Good call.